What's up, gamers? Welcome to another episode of Get Your GameSense Up. My name is Bios, your annoyed average gamer.
And I'm Super Kami. And guys, have a blessed and safe holidays.
And in this episode of Get Your GameSense Up, we are going to be talking about Cyberpunk 2077. It is finally out. And unfortunately, there's a lot of bugs.
Lots and lots of bugs, but somebody gotta call Raid because this is a danger zone.
Okay. Alrighty, go ahead and set them off, Super.
Alright guys, I've been saying for the longest time that Cyberpunk 2077 should have been delayed for a long time. It should have been delayed until all the next gen features are ready because look where we're at. They were not ready. They kept pushing it back. People said, oh, it went gold. No, they were not ready. The game was not ready. It should have been pushed back at least another 6 months, maybe even a year, because it wasn't ready. It's not ready. And remember, this game was supposed to come out in April. But sorry, I'm going off tangent. The biggest problem with Cyberpunk right now is that the base versions of the Xbox One and the PS4 are pretty much unplayable. And it's really sad because this game was originally going to come out in April, meaning the game could have potentially been worse than what it is currently if they did any improvements. And the game is dropping down into the frame rates in the teens, like 11 frames per second, 12 frames per second. The game is not loading in at all. People are falling through the world. It's just a nightmare. It's a nightmare to play on consoles, which is really sad for me to say because I'm a console man. Granted, I don't have a base Xbox One. I have an Xbox One X, which is in like the PS4 Pro equal. But it's really sad that this came out in the way it did, and I feel like people are talking about it, but I feel like it's not getting up where it should. But if this was EA or Activision, this game would have already been shut down. Like EA would have been like, okay, we're gonna shut down our servers and give you your money back. Like, yeah, people are just saying, it's CD Projekt Red, so they're great, and I'm sure they're gonna fix it. They're planning on making this game kind of like a platform to an extent. They have the anime coming, and there's
the multiplayer game coming in a few years.
Multiplayer game coming. Like, they have a lot of stuff in planning for this game. But just the way it is right now, as it was released to the public, it wasn't ready. And they should not be. They should be held accountable. They shouldn't get a free pass.
It also goes into what we were saying in a few podcasts ago, where how are you developing a game for PS4 and Xbox and all that stuff, but those main platforms, that main demographic of people it's not ready?
Yeah.
Huh? How do you do that? How do you do that? Like, it's like you've been sitting there developing for how many years, and then like some people were saying like they were working on the game on like the majority of like on a PC stuff, for next gen, make sure it's working for next gen, yada yada, and they left the base consoles for like the last, which goes into like their statement talking about how we're trying to release on all these platforms and we want to make sure everything's out at the same time and we're still working out on our kinks. No, those kinks should have been gone a long time ago. Those kinks should have been gone after their first delay of the game not coming out in April. Like, of course, no game is perfect. Of course, like, even if they, the game will still have like some issues, but it shouldn't be borderline unplayable for those consoles.
Yeah, it's actually ridiculous. Especially, a lot of games that are it's contemporary. Like, look at how games GTA 5, Red Dead Redemption, any of the Assassin's Creed games, like, those are also big open world games. Maybe not to the extent of Cyberpunk with all its moving parts, but those games aren't in the same condition. Like Call of Duty, like, those are big games, but those games aren't not breaking the Xbox, but those games are playable. They're playable. This game is running at 720p on the base Xbox One. I got 14 frames per second. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That is literally a 360.
And
that's literally crazy.
And also at this point as well, like as much as like people want to say, oh, it was marketing or management. No, everybody's accountable, because even with all of the like insiders, like the journalists that were talking to the development, to the devs, there was no information, to my knowledge, of anybody saying the game is not ready. Oh, we are
that was kind of obvious when they kept saying, "Oh, we're gonna push it back for X, Y, Z." Like, obviously, they
no. But when it came to like them talking about like, oh, like for example, that last delay and stuff like that, and like I forget her name from, I believe she's on IGN, like talking about how, oh yeah, the devs were saying like, because they were talking about like crunch and everything like that, and how like it's not that bad and yada yada. There was no like leakage of information from anybody saying that the game is not ready. Because when it happened with the Cyberpunk Twitter is talking about, oh, the game is gonna come out, I forget the date.
Okay, bro, like I understand where you're coming from, but that kind of information was never gonna be told. They were never gonna say, oh, actually guys, the game's not ready, even though we said it was supposed to come out in April. Like, they were never gonna say that. Like, they were up to a point where they just had to push it out. Like, they had to put it out in whatever state it was, and like, we'll just fix it later. Because, not only is they're a public traded company, so they have to, they don't just get to put it out whenever they want. Like, they have to put that game out. But, since they put that first release date out, if they never put that first release date out, they could still be holding on to the game. But since they hold that first release date and they're like, oh, keep pushing it back, they were really hurt. Like, they were. Like, they were never gonna say, actually, guys, the game is not close to.
No, but I'm just saying, like, how was there not a whistleblower? Because, like, for like Anthem, for example, right? Like, we got all those interviews of people saying of how like the development was just so bad. And yada,
okay,
yada.
But that came out after that art. What you're talking about came out maybe like a week or two after Anthem was out. Cyberpunk just came out this week, so that could still come out. Like a big article talking about what you're saying right now could still happen, because that article about the big expose of Anthem was like a week or two after the game came out. Cyberpunk came out like 4 days ago at this point. So I'm not saying that won't happen, but it just hasn't happened yet, as we could say.
I was on that camp of like release the game.
Yes, you were.
I was. And the game, okay, for the base, that really sucks. Luckily, I am fortunate to have a pretty good PC to actually run and play the game. Not saying as any like consolation or whatever. They really should have tried harder, or like to really make sure that everything was set to, at least for it to be playable for those versions. I'm also curious of how the game is running on Stadia.
I heard it's actually not bad on Stadia. I heard it's actually running pretty well, because I haven't really gone into it, but I was watching my Destiny podcast and they had mentioned Cyberpunk in the Destiny podcast, saying that it was running well. I was like, wow, interesting. He just said like an offhanded comment, but I haven't done much research into it. But like another critique I've been hearing about this whole debacle is that people are saying, oh, it's the next gen game. Of course, the older gen games couldn't handle it, whatever. Like, that's not a real excuse, because this game was made for last gen, current gen, however you want to call it. It was made for the PS4 and the Xbox One. And even to this day, if you're playing it on a Series X or PS5, you're just playing the backwards version, the backwards compatible version. Yeah. You're not actually playing the PS5 version of the game or the Series X version of the game. I'm sure that hardware is able to run the game better, but you're not playing the full version of the game for that console. So they really, but remember, if this game came out in April, it would only be on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. And it'd be a huge drastic change, a huge gap between PC and console. Granted, we had the next gen out, so like there's that sliver of hope. But who has a next gen console? If you win the lottery, you got a console, but not that many people have it.
Yeah, not too many people have it, and
so it's crazy.
That shouldn't even be like a statement or like that. People should not be saying that. Like, oh, of course, the last of base consoles can't play it. They're 7 years old. Okay, and
And
the
yeah,
the CD Projekt Red said that this game will be available on those platforms, so it should be playable on those platforms. Like,
period.
yeah, period. End of story. And instead of like attacking each other for people who probably couldn't even afford next gen, let alone get it, you should be properly giving your feedback to the publisher for not doing as they promised. That should be the
Mhm.
conversation, not going after because people are like less fortunate or whatever. Like, oh, of course. No, no. They said it was gonna play. It didn't. Go after them for it. I also heard that a lot of like their stock or is plummeting again because of everything that's going on right now. A lot of returns
Really?
as well. Yeah.
Wow. Like I did see them. I'm sure you've heard before, and I'll explain it to the audience. A lot of gaming publishers, they have this bonus incentive based off reviews. So if you're like from Metacritic is
Right.
a review site for gaming, really. A lot of companies say, if your game gets a review of like 7 or higher, you get an additional bonus to your check. I don't know how much a bonus would be, but it's a bonus. And a lot of employees are very dependent on that bonus to make it throughout the year or the next year to have a big purchase, for their mortgage or whatever. These are real people with real lives outside of the gaming sphere. And as of right now, Cyberpunk does not have a great user score. There's not many reviews out because it's a long game and a lot of people are still playing it. But the user score is really low. I think on Xbox it's like a 3, and on PS4 it's like a 3.4 or maybe a solid 4. So it's really sad. And I think as of right now, I think from what I saw, there was only 2 reviews for Xbox, and if it needs at least 2 to 3 more reviews for it to have an official review. But of course, the more reviews it gets, the more the number can change. But this game could potentially get a 5 on Xbox, which is ridiculous. This game was announced before the Xbox One and the PS4 were even announced. A whole year before.
Oh
This
yeah.
was the game of the generation. They had 8 plus years to make this game ready for those consoles, right? Like, it's
It's
unexcusable. It's unexcusable.
Yeah, it's not excusable. For anybody out there that wants to do like that whole thing about how like, oh, gaming development is hard, yada yada. That is their job. That's what
Thank
they're
you.
supposed to do. The job is hard, but you're supposed to be a qualified person, an employee that's supposed to handle those tasks. Yeah, it will be hard for them. I'm not like downplaying that anyway, but also you kind of excuse that is their job. Like, you can't just be like, oh, this person making a movie, they didn't make the movie good because it was too hard. No, that is your job, to make a freaking good movie, or to make a good book, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're not going to give your PC to somebody for someone to build, and they give it back to you half-assed, and then they're like, oh, sorry, building a PC is too hard.
Yeah,
What?
literally.
That makes no sense. So, for that excuse, and it's being used way too often, and people are accepting it way too easily, just putting it out there, have some common sense. That is your job. You're supposed to make things work, and for like this type of stuff, not acceptable. Okay, so from real life experiences, for me, I have the game I've been playing on my I think it's a high mid range PC. I have a 2070 Super, NVIDIA graphics card, 16 gigs of RAM, yada yada. For me, I haven't been experiencing too many bugs. Luckily, I had a few here and there, and some frame rate issues. When I'm indoors or doing like cutscene, my frame rates are typically fine. But when I'm out in the city, even when I put the crowds on low, I dipped into like the 30s, maybe low 20s ish. Um, I found like a few settings that'll help, like turning on DLSS and turning some settings off here and there to get it back up. I'm going to do some more testing. So I think it is possible to get the game running really well, straightforward. Just got to keep playing around with some things. A cousin of mine who has a PS5, he said the game runs pretty well. He does get the occasional bugs, but nothing too game breaking. The most that he had was like a character for like a cutscene. A character didn't have a gun in his hand. Another coworker has a lesser PC than mine. He only got a bug within like 4 hours of his play, and someone who has a better PC than mine, Uh, he only seen one bug within 6 hours, so it does range. Um, so I would suggest like making sure all your drivers are updated, you know, until they actually like put out enough patches to get the game properly optimized and stabled for play.
Yeah, for me personally, I haven't purchased the game. I have an Xbox One X, and I heard it's okay on the console. It dips a little bit for the most part. It's definitely better than the base PS4 and the base Xbox. But I didn't get it because I want to play it on the Series X whenever I get lucky to get one, and I'm waiting for the actual next gen patch. I don't want to play the backwards compatible version of that game. It's a really big game, and I want to play it in the best way possible. So I'm just waiting. Like, I have no problem waiting. And, I was all for the delay. And my only problem is, or not problem, but my only worry is right now, with all these bugs, and I'm sure that's what their main focus is right now, I wonder when they're going to have time to put out a next-gen patch. Like, I hope it's not 1 year from now. Like, the 1 year anniversary. You know how some games have a 1 year anniversary kind of thing? Of the 1 year anniversary, that we have the next gen patch ready. It's like I was kind of hoping the patch would be out by April-ish, like 4 months after the game's been out, 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months. So it's like a shot in the arm, or a shot in the leg to reboost the community for Cyberpunk after 6 months. I mean, granted, I don't know what their plans are for DLC and whatnot. I hope the next gen patch isn't a year away.
Yeah. It also doesn't help how they just said sometime next year. So
yeah, sometime next year.
That could be anything. For DLC, they said DLCs are going to be free.
I'm sure there'll be some paid DLC.
Some paid. What like?
Yeah, just like I just want to know how they're gonna have time to work on bugs and next gen patch and DLC
and
the multiplayer. So when are you gonna? But I'm sure the bugs are the main priority. And I was seeing some people like in the industry saying it's going to be at least 3 to 4 months, 3 to 6 months before the game's actually playable free of bugs.
Okay. Which is fine. Yeah, they should really put all their focus in just fixing these bugs. Fix up the main game, the foundation of the game, so that whatever you get later, it's not going to be as bad. Because if they start stacking this, it's going to be a nightmare. Even more of a nightmare than it already is. Because right now, I would say it's mild because it's still there. The game is playable for the most part, except for base consoles. So fix those things, get it over with, and then start talking about DLC and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And also for a disclaimer, we are not showing any hate, or we're not, being negative in that type of way towards the developers of CD Projekt Red. We're just showing how, it's not acceptable for a product to come out in this condition, and there's no excuse for it. And you guys should not accept it either, because this is your money, your hard-on work money,
your reputation.
Yeah, stuff
Look
like
what
that.
happened to Bethesda.
Right.
They were one of the most famous companies, and then they had Fallout 76 come out, and everybody was like, "You're trash."
Right.
Look at Bungie. They were one of the most biggest companies in the world. Well, not the world, but they were huge.
Yeah.
Destiny 1 came out, and Destiny 2. And look what happened.
Yeah.
Granted, I love Destiny, but yeah.
Right.
You guys need to work on your reputation.
Right. So, and it's also up to us to hold them accountable. Like, no matter who they are, like, they could, have the cleanest record, whatever. Like, even if they slip up, it's just to show that, so that other companies existing or coming up will think it's okay to put out games in these conditions only just cause. All right, guys, that was this episode of GetUR GameSense Up. Let us know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments for the state of the game. Do you guys have any words for Cyberpunk? Do you think it's okay or whatever? Let us know. And super, let them know where they can hear us.
Hey guys, we are available on all podcast platforms, including iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, the new Amazon Music, sorry.
Yeah, you can also see the video forms of these podcasts on my YouTube at youtube.com/Bios101, same as my name. And you can also catch my live streams for any games that I'm playing, such as Cyberpunk right now, at twitch.tv/Bios101. And guys, always remember,
get your game sense up.